Well, this is Daybreak Live, setting the tone for informed conversation and critical thinking. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Good morning to you this morning. I mean, so it's such a good time to be alive.
Yeah.
It seems the day is breaking quite late. Everything is still almost dark when it's about 7 o'clock. So that might be a scare for some persons, especially if you are hoping to see the day break before you wake up.
Well, maybe if you are someone like Bisola who checks her window to see if the day has broken or not, maybe you might still be in your bed
Exactly,
by now.
exactly.
And some people, your producer will be calling you, exactly, where are you? But maybe you are still.
You'll be caught in the web of lateness.
Okay, let's talk about Peter Obi this morning. You know,
Yeah.
some have asked this critical question at some point and said, look, is it doing what we call clout chasing? Is it playing what we call real opposition? Or maybe it's just it wants relevance. It just wants to be there on the pages of the newspaper for whatever reason. It just wants to put something out there. These are critical questions, actually, and these are insinuations by some people in some quarters. But the big question is, where's the president? I know. In case you have an idea.
Maybe we should ask Tinubu. Perhaps he would know where the president is. But, you know, for starters, let's start from this angle to say, well, this might be a valid question, but sometimes it's not as valid because if you check where's the president, we know where the president is.
Right.
The last information we got on the president, we knew where he was going. And so this is not even a new thing. And I mean, maybe it's good to ask questions about because the first thing that came to mind was if Peter Obi was the president, would he refuse to travel? And, you know, it's not really about traveling. It's about traveling for the right purposes. So why is the president out of the country? For one, we know one of the legit reasons for any president to leave the country, even at a very pressing time like this, would be on medical grounds. So if you
to seal bilateral relationships with some countries.
So those are the most important things. So if the president has gone on those missions, then, I mean, there's no point, you know, beating a dead horse. There's nothing you want to gain from that. But, you know, let's take it further. This is not the first time we're seeing this. We've seen president travel. I think one of the presidents that have traveled so much was our former president, late president, Muhammadu Buhari. And of course, on medical grounds, he had a lot, quite a number. I was checking the numbers. And it's quite a lot, about 225 at some point. Before some would also say about 300 and some, but the president has not even done that. It's about 196 days out of office and out of the country. I mean, the president. So, but many of those were also acclaimed to be on bilateral relations mission, not just for maybe medical purposes. But the former president, Buhari, traveled on the grounds of medical maybe emergency or medical attention or medical
At some
tourism.
point, they transferred power to the VP.
Exactly. Yeah. So because we understand if that's very paramount. If your health is at risk, then you should do something about it. So we can't blame that. And this is not even the first time we are seeing this, even in the entire Africa. Just at the last tenure, I think in Kenya, the president was accused of, you know, traveling a lot, and then he came out to say, yeah, I'm traveling to help the country, to secure bilateral relations, to engage with international partners and all of that. But it's okay. But now let's take it from this light angle. It's very important that we see how much do you have to spend traveling for a president? Now, I was checking into all of those processes and how much would be, you know, disseminated for that particular purpose. It's running into millions, maybe billions, if you have to gather all of this together. For a president to travel is not like an average person is traveling. If a president is traveling, there are a lot of finance is to be incurred. There are a lot of financial obligations. You have to consider all of that as well. What is the state, the economical state of Nigeria? What is the financial state of the country currently? And how can we still manage all of this together without breaking the bank of Nigeria? I mean, not the central bank, but I understand that you understand what I'm trying to say. If we have to do that, we have to travel, but we have to travel within the limit that is provided, one, by the Constitution, limit provided by the financial status and the current capacity of the country. We cannot overcharge the country just because the president needs to travel. Meanwhile, we can also say those legit reasons are okay to travel, but also consider the fact that how much do we have in the coffers of government to travel or to make all of this? Because I'm not sure this is even a big deal, except for instances where we see leaders traveling with their kids and people that are not even supposed to. Remember, I think 2 years ago, the last COP conference, which is climate conference,
the large entourage, you see.
I mean, it was Nigeria and Kenya happened to be the largest. They are the largest delegations, of course. You can imagine. And so some persons that were just celebrities were there to discuss climate matters. Really? Because you ask the question, how do you think these people fit into the category
what
of
exactly
people
you
that
are going
should?
there to discuss?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's even another case. But we can also cut down on the number of the people that might follow the president. I mean, if that would help us, cut some, because
Cut
of course, when the
costs.
president is out of the country or is going somewhere, there are entourage that must follow him. We understand that, but can we limit maybe some of those extraneous persons that are not supposed to be on that seat, especially if you have to cut down, cost from the government level?
You see, the big question that I asked you earlier about the whereabouts of the president, I think the last press release from the presidency was that the president was leaving Lagos for Europe, and there was no particular place mentioned in Europe. I mean, Europe is a continent, so there should be a country in particular that the president was going to. That was not made clear enough. Probably that was why Peter Obi was asking this very big question. Oh, you said he's going to Europe. Where exactly is he in Europe? And another thing about it is that usually Nigerians, they don't get to ask enough questions. And when you see some people who are actually asking some questions, people might actually feel like, are you even asking the right questions? So it's not just about asking questions. It's about being clear about the kind of questions you are asking. You mentioned about what it costs to actually travel outside the country for the president. I mean, it has been provided for in the budget, in the national budget, so automatically the president really doesn't have to worry about that. But some people are plugging into that lacuna, right? I've seen people say, oh, if you want to travel, drop your passport, you pay so amount of money, you are going with so person, you have no business with that person going there. But then because there's a space, they know that when they are traveling, they are usually going with a large number of people, so they just package you and put you on that. I've seen people do it a lot of times, but this is not really a case we should be discussing now. I think the big issue now is Nigerians have gone through this over and over again. We've had situations with former President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan. We've had that with late former President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua. In fact, there was a point that some people said he had passed away, and nobody's even talking about it. Probably it was kept under wraps just because they want to, fast track some things, get some things done before the information is put out there. But the main decision now lies with the presidency to be expressly clear about their whereabouts. Now, after that, we'll talk about the cost. Traveling outside the country, how much does it cost? But then, I'm going back to Peter Obi at this time. You can ask these questions, but not politically. These are questions that an ordinary Nigerian would have asked in the first place, but then they will be clear about what they are saying. This is not the case of the late former head of state. That was Sani Abacha, General Sani Abacha at the time, who never left the country because he was afraid there was going to be a coup that might actually displace him or kick him out of office. So this is not that era. This is a democratic setting where for anything to happen, it will go through the National Assembly, the House of Representatives, the Senate, and then transmission of power will now be done onto the Vice President. So this is not the case now. And it is only in situations where there's a lacuna. If you leave the country, I think it happened when former Senate President Bukola Saraki was Senate President. It was during the regime of President Muhammadu Buhari at the time, who left the country. And then, if not because there was a symbiotic relationship between the two, they probably would have hijacked power and probably pushed it to someone else, because he did not officially hand over to someone, right? And the best thing to do is to transmit power to your Vice President, and if you cannot do that, the Senate President can actually check. In fact, they almost did. Well, maybe there was a diplomatic talk around that time that actually made it through, but it was made expressly clear that there's a lacuna in government. And then once you did not, you failed to transfer power to your deputy. I think over time, we have seen it happen that President Tinubu will be traveling and say, oh, you are now in charge. It doesn't have to be on the pages of the newspaper or probably on radio or on TV, but as long as it is done on the floor of the House, oh, you are sending a note to the House of Assembly or the Senate, I'll be traveling and I'll be leaving the country for so number of days. And during this period, my vice president takes over proceedings. So that solves the whole lacuna in government. And I think as long as that is not there, we still have a president, right? He's just not out of the country. He's just out of the country, and then the moment he's not here, there's someone on ground who takes care of whatever it is that is happening. I mean, there are several things that has been pushed to the office of the vice president, that even if the president is on seat, he still takes charge, right? The only thing is, if there is a need for a signature or consultation, then it might get to the president. But if it is still within the confines of what he can handle, I think he will do it.
And many times it goes in the name of the president, because if you see some of the statements they release, so they release that the federal government
Of Nigeria
has said this through
nobody releases
the
such
vice president
statements unless there's a president.
Absolutely. So, but I think one of the things, the lacuna, like you've mentioned, is I want us to spotlight the lacuna issue, especially with the Constitution. Why? This is the why. The Nigerian Constitution does not specifically set the specific limits on the number of days a president can stay outside the country. But however, it mandates a formal process for transferring power, like you mentioned, if the absence is for a prolonged period. But one of the things that we are going to see in the Constitution, Section 145, as amended, says 21-day threshold for transmission of power. So that notice should be done 21 days. So if the president is going on vacation or is unable to discharge their duties, they must transmit a written declaration to the National Assembly or, to the National Assembly. If the president fails to do this within 21 days of being away, unable to perform duties, the National Assembly can now pass a resolution to mandate the vice president to serve as acting president. But I think the president has done
that. Was what happened under Umar Musa Yar'Adua. He was out of the country for a prolonged period of time. At the point, there were contemplation if power is to be transmitted to Goodluck Jonathan at that time. But unfortunately, the president passed away during that time, and there was nothing that could have been done other than to just give power to the next person in line, which was the vice president at the time. But there were a lot of contemplations. People, even on the floor of the House, there were backdoor meetings as regards what should be done. But then that was why, because of the delay, that was why some people had the misconception, or maybe some sort of belief that the president had passed away even before then. Right? Till tomorrow, you still have people with such notion in town. It was only a matter of time before they just
even the former president. Some believe he died. There's another.
Some even said he was cloned. There were serious insinuations.
But to avoid all of this, if the due process is followed, I think this would have been averted a long time. But also one of the things you mentioned, according to that Constitution, Section 145 was saying that if there is something called permanent incapacity, like the case of Musa Yar'Adua when he was sick, and also the Senate tried to amend this.
This also happened in, I think that was in Taraba State, when former governor Damba Basuntai had an helicopter crash. He was flown out of the country for treatment. When he came back, they were still waiting if he was going to be okay enough to continue his reign. In fact, at the point they said, he was back as governor, but unfortunately his health was not there to take him through it, and eventually his deputy governor had to take charge. So these things do happen. As long as if you are permanently incapacitated to take care of responsibilities as president, as governor, or even as local government chairman, I mean, the next person in line definitely takes over once that is deliberated on the floor of the House.
Let me get back straight to Peter Obi. Just like you said, some have questioned if it's always cloud chasing, if so to say. But I think one of the things we should ask him is, if you become president, would you not travel? That's one. When he was governor, I think maybe we need to get to his records to see if he ever traveled and for why, for the reason. So I think one of the things we can say quite easily is an open book. It's a no-brainer, to know that we have the acting president or the vice president in the country or the Senate, because we have a process, a due process of succession. Maybe not succession, but a due process of leadership. Like, if the president is not around, there's someone else who can take over. The president don't have to be physically present every day for every matter.
It can't even be everywhere.
Because I was asking, there was a time, maybe if the president had to forestall one of his movements. He was supposed to spend about 10 days in one of his travelings, and then he came back just because of the pressing issue. I mean, if there was that kind of pressing issues, I'm not sure the president would want to stay longer outside. So this question, I mean, a lot of people will still not agree with Peter Obi, and maybe fingers are crossed to see if he ever becomes the president, if he would do the same. Because of course, I don't know if these people forget, but Nigerians don't. If you say something today and then you go back to do the same thing, the questions will be on your table. We put the questions on your table as well. If you ever say this kind of thing, then you should also stand by it. Don't just talk, walk the talk, even when you become president.
Well, above all, the most important thing is Nigerians would want to ask this question once again. Where is President Bola Ahmed Tinubu? I mean, Europe is not a country. Europe is a continent. So make it expressive clear. But people have said, he loves going to France, and if you check the last few years that he's been president, he has been to France a few times.
He's a friend of Macron.
He's a friend of the president of France. So automatically, people would want to assume that he's in France. But the federal government should just make it clearer. Oh, where is President Bola Ahmed Tinubu?
Let me double the question for you, Samson, quickly. The question, again, I will double for you is, why is the president not ever going to Washington?
Well, I think the presidency will answer that one. Maybe, you see, sometimes when your ideology does not really match with some countries, you might not really want to have a business with them. And, probably what he feels is, he asks for Nigerians, what he feels is in his manifesto might not really align with what the American government is currently believing in. So he might just really not want to do business with them. You can see that he's done business with other countries, but then why not America?
I mean,
the only thing that has brought them together is this insecurity crisis. The moment Donald Trump talked about it, okay, let's collaborate and get it done. Well, have you really seen President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and President Donald Trump of the U.S. side by side having a conversation?
Maybe that's why I asked the question, because a lot of people are expecting that someday, somehow, the president needs to visit Washington.
Maybe when they meet outside of America, somewhere,
they
maybe France, maybe Germany, that conversation might happen.
We hope it happens.
We hope it happens. All right, away from there, let's take weather report and take you through what weather looks like across the country this morning.